All right. Welcome, DoorGrow hackers, to the DoorGrow Show. If you are a property management entrepreneur that wants to add doors, make a difference, increase revenue, help others, impact lives, and you are interested in growing your business and life, and you are open to doing things a bit differently, then you are a DoorGrow hacker. DoorGrow hackers love the opportunities, daily variety, unique challenges, and freedom that property management brings. Many in real estate think you're crazy for doing it. You think they're crazy for not, because you realize that property management is the ultimate high trust gateway to real estate deals, relationships, and residual income. At DoorGrow, we are on a mission to transform property management businesses and their owners. We want to transform the industry, eliminate the BS, build awareness, change perception, expand the market, and help the best property management entrepreneurs win. I'm your host, property management growth hacker and expert Jason Hull, the founder of Open Potion, Gather Kudos, Thunder Local, and of course, DoorGrow. Now, let's get into the show. And today's guest is Jordan Muela, which I said very white boyish, sorry. And welcome to the show, Jordan.
Hey, thanks for having me here. By the way, I love that intro, man. That's something I can get behind.
Awesome. That's our manifesto, I call it, for kind of what our cause is and our purpose here at DoorGrow and for the show. So, Jordan, I'm really excited to have you on the show. It's been a long time coming. You've got a lot of different things that you're involved in the property management industry. I'm sure everybody listening to the show is familiar with you or should be. So, welcome to the show. Grateful to have you here. And where do you think we should start? Let's start with how you got into all of this property management stuff. Like, let's go back.
Rewinding. So way back in the day, I worked for a venture-backed HOA company. I got mentored called Real Manage. I got mentored by the CEO at that company, and he was like really generous with his time, just took a ton of time investing in me and my now co-founder. And at the end of that time, he kicked us out and said, hey, you got to go start your own thing. Doesn't matter what, it's probably not going to work out, but you just got to start. So from that, we started a company called Manage My Property that does lead gen. It's like a smaller version of all property management, basically. Did that for a couple of years. It was a real grind. Eventually, we realized that we were selling leads to folks that didn't have any kind of a sales process, which is really challenging because the default response is that the leads are terrible. So we decided to pivot into software. We built Lead Simple to help people manage and close the leads. And that company's done well. There was still a lot of educating the market around, now we're selling a sales CRM to people without a sales department, still kind of challenging. So we started an event called PM Grow to help do some professional education around that, started a podcast, eventually got to the point where we realized that even if you are doing the sales, you're closing business, you're adding doors, your life and your business can still be a disaster if you don't know what it means and how to actually go about optimizing for profit. So we started Profit Coach to help provide that third-party fractional CFO kind of advising. And then it's just gone on from there, man.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've taken a lot of different sort of routes and things have you've pivoted, which is very entrepreneurial. It's something that we do, and recognizing different problems. And that's very similar in how we've kind of built our business, starting out as largely a website design firm and then shifting more into the consulting space and recognizing there's similar problems that we've identified. So we did ads for property managers doing AdWords and started managing that for a little while. And we recognize the same thing. Like they would say the leads are terrible. And that's what cold leads are. They're pretty terrible generally. And they just didn't know how to deal with them or use them properly. And so that was a challenge. And then, we also recognized people need a sales process. They weren't even answering their phones. And so we started coaching them on sales and how to move through that. And then, you've got your PM Growth Conference. You guys beat me to it, man. I was really wanting to get a conference out. It was like this dream of mine, and we were a couple of years behind. But I think
you still did it, man.
We did it, and it was painful, but it was like giving birth. I would imagine. Oh, yeah. No offense to the ladies. Totally. I'm sure it's much harder than running a conference, but running the conference was hard for me. It was difficult, and no doubt. And I'm a little bit nervous about doing it again just because of all that. But we learned a lot, and it should be a lot easier the second time around. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So, but So what is your main focus then right now?
Man, at this very moment, I'd say my main focus is pushing out the NARPM accounting standard. That's something that's taken a ton of time and will hopefully be launching at NARPM Broker Owner. But we were retained by NARPM to develop that accounting standard. We released some benchmarking data coming up on almost a year ago. Now we had a bunch of companies submit their financial and operational data, and we provided the first set of financial benchmarks for the industry. And out of that, in order to make that go from just kind of an intellectual exercise to actually something that can really help the industry as a whole, Brad Larson specifically asked us to work with NARPM to develop a accounting standard, and we've gone ahead and been doing that. So that's been sucking up a lot of my time lately, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, we had a really great episode for those watching or listening with Brad Larson talking all about that. And so I recommend everybody check that out because I thought it was really fascinating, and it looks like something that's very well needed in the industry that could help. Just standardizing things can make communication among companies a lot easier. And I see a lot of benefits to that. It's really part of the property management industry growing up, and it needs to happen. So awesome.
Apples to apples. I mean, yeah, for sure. I will just say, like, the context would be, Jason, if a company came to you and instead of saying, I'm at such and such doors and my head count is such and such, if instead it was like, here's like a fact sheet, here are 5 numbers that indicate the financial health of my business. It just clarifies like what the starting point of having a meaningful conversation is. Not that numbers are everything, but there's a lot that the numbers that can tell you that we don't know simply because a lot of people don't track their data. And so you have to try and make inferences with all this other secondary abstractions as opposed to just like, what's the bottom line financial reality right now?
Yeah, I get to see inside a lot of companies. And one of the things I've noticed is it's not just about doors. You'll see companies that have a large number of doors,
Totally,
and they're making peanuts, lifetime value per client. And it's really ridiculous. And they're not, some of them aren't even profitable. I had a client that came to us with 600 doors, and his property management business wasn't even making $1. It wasn't profitable at all. And it was because it was this cancerous tumor sitting on the side of a really healthy real estate company. And so he was able to artificially get past those typical hurdles that most property management companies get stuck at by supplementing, and pulling in resources from his real estate company. So he never had to make the changes that should have been necessary. And once he made those changes, he now has a profitable company and half the staff, and he had fired 200 doors. And
seen it. The inverse of that, the warped inverse of that, is the person who is at 200 doors, not making any money, thinking that the solution is getting to 600 doors.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and historically they've grown by like 20% per year, but some if I could just like triple in size within the next 12 months, that would solve the problem. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance there. It's a rich conversation.
Yeah. And I mean, and lifestyle is certainly a factor when growing companies. So you had mentioned a little bit about that when you were leading into talking about Profit Coach, but it's, it's about making sure that you have a business that serves your needs and meets your goals in life. And I've got a client that is frustrated because she hasn't broken the 100-door barrier, but she deals with high-end properties. She gets a really good, profit margin per door. And but when she first came to me, she hated her business. She hated her company, thought it was like said, I want to get out. I just want to spend time with my family, and everybody listening going, give me your info. I'll buy it. I want that company. But, really, it wasn't the business and her role in it. She wasn't aligned towards what her strengths were and what made her feel alive. And she was spending her time doing things that really drained her or that she found frustrating. And so just getting clarity on herself allowed her to completely change how she operates inside of her business. And now she loves it. She's like, I get to do what I love, and I love my business, and I'm not doing all the things that I didn't enjoy doing. And so it's not just about doors. I mean, really, it can be just about profitability, and it can be about, do you have the life that you want to live? Because life's not that long. We want to have businesses that we enjoy doing. So Jordan, tell everybody about you as an entrepreneur. Like, what stuff do you feel like is your area of genius? What do you love doing versus what drains you?
Right. I would say that unique ability is kind of the phrase that I would use. That's the Dan Sullivan concept. And for me, unique ability looks like a couple of different things. Number one is networking, going out into the market, having as many rich conversations as I can with the end user in order to absorb context, as well as doing research from outside of the industry, gathering ideas, synthesizing them, representing them to the market in a way that is accessible and useful, and then doing biz dev opportunities and building new businesses around those needs.
Yeah. And that sounds very in alignment kind of with how I kind of view the world and do things. And my wife calls it my Bible of the week. Like whatever I'm into that week, I always get into some weird random topic and I go down these little rabbit holes of like figuring stuff out, and they could have almost nothing to do with the stuff I'm actually working on. And but eventually I pull it all together and am able to extrapolate some ideas and piece things together and find the principles and come up with something unique. So have you ever done a Myers-Briggs test on yourself?
INTJ.
INTJ. Okay. Interesting. So, yeah.
I will say that what you just described is really the cost and the penalty that you pay for being a visionary. You see something long term. You don't fully see it. You sense that there is a completion state that can really meaningfully synthesize the disparate concepts and ideas, and you lean into it based on gut. And other people are like, "What are you doing? You're clowning around. Like, just describe it, draw it for me." And I can't even do that, but I can just like sense it. And then eventually it emerges and is like, "Oh, that was really smart. You must have had this like plan." It's like, no, I didn't have a plan. I just I followed my intuition in it. But being somewhere in the middle of that process, it takes a lot of faith to keep going. And the thing that you mentioned a second ago about people being unhappy with their business, many of us are not willing to just say what we want. We're very driven by what we think we should want or what others want for us. Learning that nobody can give you permission to want something, like nobody can validate whatever your heart's desire is for your business or your life. Accepting that really frees you up to just like lean into it. And once you lean into that, you start making the types of decisions about, am I going to take this next door where it's low fee and this person was disrespectful to me on the phone? Well, if I think that I should be at 100 doors and that's like what I should be doing, then maybe. But if I know that I really just want to have a great life and enjoy my work, then I won't. Clarity, man.
Yeah, it's really huge. One thing I see entrepreneurs fall into is this trap of opportunity. And people go, "What? That's a trap." But opportunity, I think, is kind of what kills us as entrepreneurs, because we see it everywhere. If you're entrepreneurial, you can see a problem and you can say to yourself, "I can make money solving that problem." And that's everywhere. Like everywhere, the world has flaws and is broken. And entrepreneurs, we can see that, oh, that's a solvable problem. It seems very maybe apparent to me, or I can make money solving this problem, or I could help people solving this problem. It seems like a lot of people have this problem. And what we end up doing is we create the business we can in exchange for the business that we really want or need. Don't create the business that you can, because we're versatile human beings as entrepreneurs. We can push through, we'll take risks, we'll do the things necessary. We can tactically and strategically figure things out. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of, well, I can. And how many times do people come to you with opportunities, with a new idea? Pretty often.
I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about buying this new portfolio. I'm thinking about starting a vacation rental business. It goes on and on. Property management is at the center of so many business opportunities that if you have that if you don't have focus or you don't know what the big picture outcome is, you're right. You're surrounded by distraction.
Yeah. And so, and that's where I think a lot of entrepreneurs lose sight, is if we're not clear on what we want. And in order to get clear on what we want, I think first we have to get clear on who we are. So for example, knowing that you're an INTJ, your role, you would probably really enjoy being involved in planning stuff. And
totally.
you love planning. You like to make sure things are planned out. Whereas I hate planning, and I have an operator in my business that loves that stuff. He runs team meetings. He makes sure everything's scheduled on the calendars, like all of that stuff. And I don't even like manage. I just live according to what my calendar says and my team plan and tell me what I'm supposed to be doing. I didn't even schedule this interview.
Yeah, for sure. I would say I like planning at the highest level possible. I like thinking about meta work. I like thinking about learning how you learn, planning how you plan. That stuff at the highest level is really of interest to me. And I have so many inputs in my life and in my business that I feel compelled to get a lot more introspective about how I manage my time. Otherwise, I'm constantly just feeding on this trough of endless work, but there's a very low probability that it's going to result in the outcomes that I want.
Yeah, it's a I mean, really easy sand trap to fall into as a business owner is to end up doing all the stuff that you can do instead of the stuff that you should be doing in your business. And that's
And you
very
know
easy to
it.
fall into.
I think we all know it. For me, let me just give you an example of work I really enjoy doing that is not value added. Graphic design. I enjoy it. It's just like, it's fun. It's just like, it's really gratifying. And I can convince
Creative.
myself,
Mhm.
oh yeah, like I can convince myself that there is demonstrable value in that work. It's just not enough value to justify me doing it really at all. So if I'm doing it, it's an indulgence, and I might as well be doing that as a hobby on my off time rather than using that cathartic outlet within work hours. The ability to separate work from playtime really cleanly was a big kind of epiphany moment for me, because when you don't do that, it all just bleeds together. And those of you who work at home, you know what I'm talking about. You really have to do some mental gymnastics to turn it off. The low point in my career, Jason, was when I was working out of my bedroom. That was really the low point in my career, because it was just like,
Yeah.
I'm spending 16 hours in this, no, probably 20 hours in the same room. It was horrible.
It's something that us entrepreneurs that work from home can fall into. I remember like some really busy periods, suddenly kind of waking up mentally and realizing I hadn't left the house in 2 weeks. I hadn't gone outside. Like I don't have to. I mean, I've got such a huge support structure and system in place that I'm not even doing grocery shopping anymore. And I could just not leave the house. So I consciously make an effort to go for walks and like get
Nice.
outside. And
Nice.
yeah, so it's interesting that and there's been because of so many entrepreneurs now, the ability to work from home or work from a space, it's created this sense of isolation. I think social media has perpetuated that even stronger because we've given up social networks and relationships for social media. So we're just consuming content instead of having friends. And so there's also this. So last night I actually went and did something out of my comfort zone and went to my first Toastmasters meeting ever, just because I
Nice.
wanted to be around some other human beings and see what that was all about. And so, yeah, we need to make sure that we create the life that supports us and gives us what we need. And it's not just about making dollars.
Connection, man. I think meaning is really defined by human connection at the end of the day. So I feel like societally, there are a whole host of maladies and diseases and problems that are purely the byproduct of a sense of loneliness and a lack of connection. And that sounds squishy for some people, but that's just where I'm at.
I think there's evidence of that because we've seen so many co-working spaces start to pop up. Co-working is now a thing. And what is it? It's an office where all these people that work from home can come together and feel like they're around other human beings just to connect with others. And so I think it'll be interesting to see. I think there'll be a shift maybe away from social media, but let's get into the topic of growth, like how property managers can grow. And I think we touched on a few things that are probably holding them back, but what have you found is maybe the number one challenge that property managers run into with growing their businesses?
Yeah. So I would say, hold on, let me turn my light back on one sec. I would say that you got to back up and really ask yourself before you get into the growth. There's the assumption that growth is a good idea and it's the right time for you. And if we grant that assumption, we can have one conversation. But the conversation before that is just figuring out if growth should be your priority. That's a revenue per unit. That's a cost per unit kind of conversation to figure out, do you have something that is worth scaling, Or does growth for you look like getting rid of 10% or 20% of your portfolio?
Yeah.
There's a whole subset of the industry that where growth is distraction. That's what it is. It is a distraction of like, I got these problems I don't understand and I don't feel qualified to lean into, but I'm just going to get more doors. That applies to the bulk of the industry, in my personal opinion. If we assume that those issues were resolved, take it off the table, you fix your pricing structure, you fix your cost structure, and we're just talking about how to add doors. Now there's a new meta conversation that enters, and that is, what are your internal capabilities, giftings, and abilities where people want to jump to? And Jason, you know this just as well as I do, but where people want to jump to is it APM? Is it Google? Like, give me where do I swipe the credit card?
Answer. Yeah.
Where do I swipe the credit card and get the leads? But way upstream of that is, what does your sales process look like? Do you have a sales process? Whose role is that? Are you sending leads to your poor PMs, expecting them to do sales, which is a horrible idea? Happy to get into why. Do you have any interest in any chops in understanding growth? Where it starts for me is operationalizing sales and marketing. The level of awareness goes from it's important enough to pay for it, and then a small subset of folks actually graduate to being willing to manage it. Everybody understands leasing is a process. It needs systems. The same thing with maintenance. All of ops, we understand that, but somehow with sales and marketing, it's like this necessary evil. I don't want to put any programs or processes in place. And I really don't even want to do it. I just want the doors. I don't want to know about it. I'm uncomfortable having a meta level conversation about brand and strategy and positioning. That doesn't work. That doesn't cut it. At the end of the day, the single greatest determiner of your ability to grow is not the quality of your service offering. I wish it wasn't so. I wish it was purely predicated upon how great a property manager is, but it's not true. If you build it and they will come, it's a lie. Right. It's predicated upon your ability to execute in the area of sales and marketing. Until you step up, until you take ownership, until you operationalize, a lot of the low level conversation about where do I get more leads is just a waste of breath.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, this myth that if I just have good enough service, the business will magically make money on its own. And so if you look at the functions of a business, the major functions in the pipeline of a business, fulfillment and delivery is at the tail end. I mean, you've got like lead gen and nurture and converting and all that comes before it. And if you think you can just go and you usually use the analogy of just turning on the spigot to the hose of leads. Like, I just want marketing. I'm going to turn on this cold lead pipeline of leads. I just want leads flowing in, but you've got this hose that has all these major leaks. And at the other end, you're trying to water your business. That's this starving, struggling brown plant that's trying to get some water. It not very much is going to make it there. That's where you're getting contracts at the very end of the hose. That's where you're getting deals. That's where you're getting growth. And those leaks need to be shored up that come far earlier in the pipeline. But a lot of people, they reach out to us and they're like, hey, I just want leads. Just give me leads. And then I get the converse, and I get people that are like, I'm not ready to grow. I just need to keep focusing on my internal operations and systems. And just, if I make it all better first, I got to get everything perfect first and before, so I'm ready to grow. And there's some truth to that, but sometimes you get a certain subset of property management business owner that are more on the operational tech side. Maybe they're high S, high C, and they think, I just need to build the perfect system and watch a ton of YouTube videos and spend all this time trying to figure it out on my own. And I can build this ultimate machine, and somehow business will start to be attracted to that magically.
Well, again, it's that disconnect of like, I need to build all these systems except in the areas of sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Like, somehow ops needs to be really dialed in, but sales and marketing is like, oy vey, what can I do? Where do I swipe the credit card? You gotta choose where you're going to step up, and you gotta choose what you as the owner need to manage. Somewhere in the NARPM accounting standard, there's some documentation on the difference between what you need to do, like, i.e. what needs to be executed against. And that's something you can delegate, versus what you need to know. Regardless of how much you delegate, there are always essential things that the business owner has to know. And in my mind, growth, at least as it relates to positioning, branding, values, a lot of people want to bifurcate this conversation and view the things I just described as kind of these like low-level tools or mechanisms. I think about more in terms of like attraction-based marketing. If you have deep conviction, which people can smell and sense and see, the market will reward that. If you skipped over that stuff because it was just a means to an end, you just really wanted the growth, there's something kind of dysfunctional in that.
Yeah. It reminds me of Simon Sinek's famous TED Talk video in which he was talking about people don't buy what you do. And a lot of times that's how we sell. We try to focus on here's what we do. He says people buy why you do it. There's lots of different property management companies that do or claim to do all the same stuff. And if that's your only differentiator, they might as well just find the cheapest one out there. But people don't really buy what you do. They want to find somebody they feel like they can trust. And business and sales happens at the speed of trust. And the people they trust are the people that they resonate with, that share their values, and that they feel like they're in alignment with. It doesn't matter if you say you do all the right stuff logically, if emotionally or purpose-wise, they feel like there's a disconnect between their values and yours. Like maybe they're not my best interests at heart, even though they're doing all this, or maybe I can't trust them. So they're going to push back on every maintenance request. But as soon as you get in alignment with somebody and they're like, hey, I trust this person, they let down their guard, they sign up and sign the contract. There's a huge difference between somebody resonating with why you're in business. And I think that's something everybody skips. I have to take business owners back to that when I connect with them to let's get clarity on your avatar. Let's get clarity on who you want. Let's get clarity on who you are as an entrepreneur and how your brand connects to that. And let's make those congruent so that you don't have a brand on the surface that is different than what's inside the tin. Because when people smell that disconnect, instantly trust goes away. They feel like there's a lack of values. And a lot of times I'll use the analogy of, it'd be like having a company called Black Tie Property Management, and you show up to your first meeting with this company and you see Jebediah on the front porch with straw hanging out of his mouth in a rocking chair out in front of the company saying, I'm the business owner, right?
Nothing else matters at that point. At that point, if this person, if it was clear that this person is a master property manager, it still is like the disconnect is so shocking. Congruency was a great word. I loved how you put that. I mean, the question to ask yourself is, what would be the evidence? What would be the evidence of a person being trustworthy? Like what would be the behaviors or things that you would expect to see from someone that's trustworthy? Here's one for me. You talk about vision, values, mission, purpose. I don't buy that anybody cares about property management functionally so much that that's enough to do a great job. There always is a bigger why. The why is an extension of me and who I am. It's not about who you are as the person I'm serving. It's about my values. My values being that I'm service oriented. I want to help others. I want to facilitate financial freedom. I mean, talk about an underserved, neglected message. We either have property management as basically making sure something bad won't happen, a glorified gopher, or we have wealth creation through real estate. Like, which of those is a more interesting, inspiring proposition? But instead, people want to just say, of all of the gophers that are going to prevent something bad from happening, I'm the best one. 30 years in business, number one, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you can try and scrap over that small pond, or you can jump into the bigger one.
Yeah, I think a really simple way that any business in any industry can establish themselves as a leader and capture and be more attractive and capture more business is to just take what everybody else talks about and expand your vision. Just have a bigger vision. Like, we're not just trying to change the property management industry. We believe that property management can have an impact on the world at large, and it can have changed the world. It can impact tens of thousands and millions of families' lives, for example. And so I think when you give people a bigger vision to buy into, so you can say with your company, we're not just focused on managing the property, we're focused on, impacting families' lives, or we're focused on helping our clientele become, financially astute investors. And it's a bigger vision than just, we're going to deal with toilets, tenants, and termites so you don't have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, people are willing. Haven't all of the listeners, haven't I chosen a higher priced option knowingly because you just felt like that the brand values were just more in alignment with what you were getting? I mean, I'll do that all day long. You know, most of these people that we're dealing with are not flat broke. Like most investors are not flat broke. There's some room for preference bias towards an attraction based brand. But if you're not offering that, you're forcing me as the consumer to go tit for tat, bullet point for bullet point, dollar for dollar, and to commodify you. Help me as the consumer to help you by setting the buying criteria beyond just functional, literal property management, maintenance, etc.
All right, so let's say a company's got their values figured out. They're clear on why they're in business. The business owner understands like what their role should be, and what tactically should they start doing next if they want to grow their business?
So I'm a big fan of content marketing. I'm a big fan of taking those ideas, that mindset, those thoughts, and spreading it as wide and as far as possible. So for me, content marketing looks like two things. It looks like the micro of one by one, door by door conversations, shaking hands, interacting with people, building a real living and breathing network, as well as the one-to-many of making videos, starting a podcast, things like that. I happen to have a radical preference for video and audio simply because I am writing. We're going to write tens of thousands of words in the course of this podcast simply by talking. The efficiency of that compared to the written medium, there's just no comparison. But really, I would say philosophically, finding the most efficient mediums and processes to spread value to your target market would definitely be my starting point. And that's bigger than, and I don't know if that was tactical enough for you, but that would be my starting point.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I think most really effective growth strategies where people are focusing right now on that blue water, or blue ocean, or capturing people long before they're searching, I think really focuses on, and it's connected to one-to-many sales. It's connected to authority in your marketplace. And the way to establish yourself as an authority in the marketplace, especially among investors, is you have to have some content out there that establishes you or creates that perception of being an authority. And that could, we both have podcasts and do podcast episodes. I go on other people's podcasts, and certainly I get all of this episode will be transcribed, but you're right. Very few people will probably read the transcription. They will watch the video or they'll listen to the audio version in iTunes. And people consume content in different ways. And I think the one great thing about content is it's high leverage. So we're recording this episode. We're doing it live. It's being broadcast live to 3 different channels on Facebook right now. And then later, this can easily be exported and uploaded to YouTube. And then later, that's going to be transcribed into text, and it's going to be released as an audio episode on a podcast. And then it lives on forever on all these channels. And then if an episode's pretty decent, the guests that I have on may also share it with their audience and may put it onto their website. And so content can be leveraged in a lot of ways. And video allows you the opportunity to not just create textual content, but through transcription, but also gives you the benefit of stripping out the audio and having just audio. So you've got video, audio, text, and really we spend maybe 30 minutes, hour doing this, and the rest of it can be systemized.
So can we talk a little bit about the difference between content for the sake of building authority and helping people versus content for the sake of, I got to increase my number of words, basically SEO and SEO driven context. Like, I'll confess, man, at the end of the day, at the beginning of my era, when I started that manage my property business, I didn't care about talking to people. I wanted to have a server in the cloud, make money anonymously. Didn't want relationship. I'm at the complete other end of the spectrum now. But back in the day, I was doing word spitting, man. Like, it was a different era. The search engines were much easier to game and manipulate, but I was doing things like word spinning, where you write one article and you turn it into 20. you just find all kinds of crap to write about as
Yeah.
inexpensively as possible.
Sure.
I
Like
think that
best
there is
property manager in Tucson and why you should choose this in Tucson and Tucson property management, you know, choosing a Tucson property management company. Yeah, those kind of articles, nobody gives a shit about. I mean, let's be honest, nobody cares. So here's the analogy I use with property managers. When they ask me about doing that type of content marketing or using, you know, spammy type of content and writing a blog and just writing all this content to game search engines, I'd say or they'll ask, should I start a newsletter and get people to subscribe to my content? And I say, well, if that's your strategy content wise, how many plumbers newsletters and podcasts are you subscribed to?
Right.
And they say none.
Yeah.
And I say, why? Because they want you, they want property managers, they want your business, and you want your client's business. Why aren't you subscribing to the plumbers? Why aren't you interested in plumbing?
Yeah. Right.
They're like, because I don't care about that. And I say, your clients don't care about property management. They don't. That's why they're hiring you.
Yeah. I think that you're right there. I mean, we're not talking about a lifestyle brand, right? This is not Oprah magazine that would be the content that would be published in that. B, the reason that people wouldn't subscribe to their plumber is because 99.999 chance the content is going to be complete crap. So what I would say is, I'm not even saying that you couldn't get value from that strategy. I'm just saying that's like flying a 747 upside down. Somebody knows how to do that. And to that person, God bless, but I don't. And I know that my clients don't, you know. I got pretty close to that kind of game back in the day, but the whole point and thrust of Google is to not provide any kind of reward for that kind of behavior. So if you're the 1% of the 1%, you know, in another life you were a search engine optimization expert and you want to milk that sounds good. Otherwise, any kind of a game that is an abstraction from just leaning into straightforward value creation for your customers is a really bad idea. That's what I would generally say.
Yeah, I totally.
It's not even that it's not effective.
I think that's totally true. I think the thing to remember is that everybody gets so caught up in trying to please Google. They want to bow down to the God Google and worship the God Google, and they forget that the real God of their business is their customer. And what ends up happening is, if you focus on pleasing Google without trying to please people, what ends up happening is you end up with this keyword spammy content, and Google figures that out. And Google's whole goal is to please people, the same goal that the user should have, or the business owner should have. It's to please people. And so the best long-term strategy to game the search engine is to focus on pleasing people, because that's Google's goal too. People will figure out some currently white hat tactics but those all eventually become black hat. They all eventually become tactics that Google's going to penalize as soon as they figure out that, oh, people have figured out how to game us here. Let's penalize those people. And we've all seen the property manager that had a ton of keyword spammy content that got either blacklisted on Google or had a ton of really terrible backlinks because they were hiring the companies in India to give them tons of backlinks, because that was the game back in the day. And now backlinks have a relevancy score, and now they're penalized. So I think the best long-term strategy is just focus on your customer, which really the great companies do that anyway because they care.
Exactly. It's also what's really fulfilling and rewarding. Like if you're a good business owner and you like helping people, it's really enjoyable. The biggest cost here is not the nuance of Google's search ranking algorithm. It's that you have limited time, energy, effort, and focus. Do you want to focus on things that are useful and helping other humans and sitting in that magic place of connection and value and relationship? Or do you want to mess around with clowning on black hat SEO games? For me, I don't want to do it. And I got slapped, man. I'll just tell you, back in 2011, Penguin Panda, we with Manage My Property, we got slapped. I want to say we lost about half our rankings or more. And a lot of people did. It wasn't necessarily because we were doing something bad.
APM, same thing. All property management got penalized. You saw Yelp, even Yelp started to go down in a lot of areas. I mean, any directory.
They did. That's what did it for me. I was like, going forward, my career will be focused on value, not search engine games. It will be focused on helping people and create as much value at the most core deep levels possible. So, I mean, that sounds a little more philosophical than tactical, but if you make that kind of a high level commitment, it'll manifest itself in the tactics. You know, you might still do APM, but you'll do so knowing that these leads, generally speaking, are crap. They go out to a bunch of people. You got to call them in 5 minutes. It's its own game. So if you're going to play the APM game, that's great. I'm happy for you. But if you're not willing to play the APM game, then don't even start. It's a waste of money. You got to know your lane and execute against the playbook that is specific to your capabilities. And yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think a lot of the tactics that people try to implement in their business are the equivalent of vitamin pills. They're like little supplements, but if you're not eating food and getting water and getting the main staples to survive and oxygen, you're not going to be very healthy. And so it's so easy to, as business owners, to focus on, we tend to focus on the things that are the furthest away from ourselves personally. But we get the biggest gains in success by focusing inwardly on ourselves. So we try to blame our team, or we try to blame the market, or we try to blame our target audience, or like, and we try to focus on marketing and everything furthest away in the whole sales pipeline or in the operations of the business away from ourselves.
Yes.
And the biggest gains I've had with clients are where we go is they allow me to go as deeply and as personally into them as possible. And what ends up happening, which is magical, when they get that clarity on themselves and what they should be doing and what their real values are and what they really love doing. And they think they know this stuff, but when they really get that clarity that they didn't even see possible at that level, they start changing everything. They're like the sun at the center of the solar system. And when that sun changes, everything changes. They start changing how they sell. They start changing how they communicate during their sales process. They start changing their team. They start firing people. They start hiring people that have their values. They start changing the way their company is organized. Everything starts to change as a ripple outward. And what's really frustrating for business owners and entrepreneurs is when they're focused on everything outward and they feel powerless and like they can't control it. And all they have to do is change themselves. That's the one common denominator in the business. They're the person on the throne. They're the center of that solar system. And they're trying to change everything the furthest out and not focusing on themselves. And that's not what people want to hear. They come to you and they're like, I want leads. I want to focus on the furthest thing. Let's do marketing. It's far away from everything. And they don't want to work on sales or their marketing or their website or their principles or their values as a company or how they sell or what their team or themselves. And they don't even have like culture in their own company. And they think, well, culture is this fluffy, silly stuff that doesn't even really matter. Yet it creates customer service. It creates sales. It creates the value. It creates everything your clients want to get from you.
Right. Ask yourself, when you walk into Chick-fil-A and you see those smiling young people there that are kind and polite, ask yourself, like, was there some kind of a mind? Are they hypnotizing those people? Is there a manual to make a human being emote happiness?
It's chemicals in the chicken, maybe. Some magic stuff in the chicken.
Maybe, or maybe there's actually a cultural difference between how McDonald's and Chick-fil-A manage and hire.
Absolutely.
It's probably more likely to be the latter. You're so right, man. How many times have you had somebody come to you and say, hey, everything's great. Everything in here, it's all great. The business is going great. I really just need leads. And you poke and there's this resistance and the resistance and the resistance. And at some point you start to realize that having that conversation risks self-indictment. Having that conversation risks affirming my worst fears that I might not be good enough. I might not have the chops. Those are some heavy conversations. But I know that in my life, it's been the exact same experience. That's where the biggest growth and the biggest opportunity has come from. And the meaning, man, because at the end of the day, the business is just a means to an end. So I'm with you. Like, I'm deep in the finance. I'm deep in the numbers. I'm deep in the money. That's more like kind of where my conversation is happening, whereas yours is happening more on that level. But I just want to like completely affirm that message. The money and the numbers are a way to identify and uncover. It's a forcing function to have bigger conversations. That's really what's happening. The fourth or the fifth time where we've identified there's a problem mathematically, this is what needs to happen. We have mutual agreement. And now we're having the third conversation about the same thing. That's no longer an accounting and a finance conversation. You know what I mean?
Yes, so you have a very, like, your whole approach and your worldview is very INTJ based. Like I can see that. Like you focus on, you love the numbers, you love the logic, you love seeing that. And I'm an ENTP. So what that means is I love just pulling in ideas and from a variety of sources and piecing things together. Everything in my universe is big picture, theoretical, and how it all flows and comes together. I'm very like focused on the principles that drive and will create the numbers. So I approach it from that opposite standpoint. My business coach, Alex Sharfin, has this great sentence that he says, and I think this, if somebody's listening to this and going, well, I think maybe what they're saying is true, and maybe I need to change myself, or maybe I need, coaching, or maybe I need to bring somebody in to help me in the business. Maybe I do need, it's about me. Maybe. Here's the phrase that really kind of hit me hard that I heard from him. He says, if you don't have the business that you want right now, and I think most business owners would hear that and go, yeah, I want my business needs to be different. I want it to be different. I want my team to be different. I want this to be different. If you don't have the business that you want right now, you are not yet the person that can run it yet. You're not that person yet. If you don't have the business that you want, you're not the leader or the entrepreneur or the CEO or the salesperson or whatever you feel like your role is. You're not that person that you need to be yet in order to have that. And that's kind of a hard thing.
Couldn't agree more, man. Like, at the end of the day, we're in America. This is the freest country on earth. You can do whatever you want. So your actions are being fed by your thoughts. If your thoughts were in line with the outcomes, you would have what you want. I think similar to that, something my coach told me that also had a big impact was that just meditating on the fact that there is a reward for dysfunction. And if there wasn't a reward from it, we would stop doing it. I can't keep saying there's this painful area of my life or this circumstance, and it keeps happening and it keeps happening and I hate it. Well, you don't really hate it. You actually like it because you facilitate it. You're the one that's choosing it in the first place. Getting clear on what that reward is actually opens up a ton of possibility. Like the one we were just talking about. I can't find any good people. What I actually mean is I need to be the smartest person in the room. So I can't hire anybody that is more competent than me. So the reward is I get to maintain a sense of superiority because I'm not big enough to grow beyond that.
Totally. So yeah, I call those payoffs. So everybody finds this payoff because a payoff is like a crappy, cheap version of what you really want. It's like you're settling for this payoff. So and there has to be a payoff, or we wouldn't live with that dysfunction. We wouldn't tolerate it.
Prices and payoffs.
And so, there's always a cost. And so, no, I love that distinction. That makes a lot of sense. That's something that we fall into as business owners. A lot of times is we're focused on wanting to be the smartest guy in the room and I think, or you'll also hear it phrased this way, where they say that nobody else can do it as good as me. What an egotistical, crappy belief system to have. Like nobody else can do this as good as me. And maybe that's true about one little role in the business. And maybe that's the one little role you should be doing. But it certainly isn't true for 90% of the functions in the business, where you'll see somebody still operating as a solopreneur or trying to micromanage every single person on their team, operating with transactional leadership, trying to force and micromanage everybody to follow some sort of process instead of giving them the ability to actually win and create outcomes.
Yeah. What if it is true? Let's say it's objectively true. So what? What does that mean? Like where are you taking that conclusion? In my business, I don't do anything. I don't want to do any of the work. I want to sit. I want to think. I want to encourage. I want to lead. I want to synthesize information and see possibility in the future. But in terms of actually getting in the weeds and doing the work, my aspiration is to have as little involvement as possible, because I'm going to be a bottleneck. And well, you asked me at the outset what my unique ability was. Well, the inverse of that is all of the vast majority of things that could be done that I'm terrible at. I'm not trying to burden the world with me doing a crap job of things that I am capable of, but not truly gifted at. That is a massive glass ceiling on the business. So I'm all about the concept of a self-managing company, which basically just means that everybody in the organization acts within the context of their unique ability.
Yeah. So I think, no, that makes a lot of sense. So the difference really what you're talking about is strategic work versus tactical work. And I think as entrepreneurs, the number one thing we can do to help grow our company is to figure out how to shift away from doing tactical work to offload tactical work and shift our time percentage-wise towards greater amounts of strategic work. Or as some people say, working on the business instead of in the business. If you are your best employee, you are holding back the company's ability to grow. And I think fundamentally, that's probably the biggest thing that holds people back in growing their own business is that they are too attached to them having to do something tactically, and they're not willing to give that up, because as long as they are always doing some major pieces in the business that are tactical, they're forever holding the business hostage through a bottleneck that's them.
Okay, so can we make some caveats there? Can we just talk about the guy that is at 100 doors and has no idea how to get to 300 doors and is really disinterested and not suited? And it's like, if that's where you're going to stay, if you're committed to staying at 100 doors, I personally don't have any real judgments against that, other than if you're at 100 doors and you're not making any money.
Right.
That's dysfunctional. You're at 100 doors, you're going to stay at 100 doors and there's no profit to show for that. I'm happy to quibble over. You're at 100 doors. You want to tell me you've got the badge of working 1,000 hours a week, whatever it is. If you want to stay small, that's great, but you just optimize for profit and get all the leverage that you can. There are different playbooks. That's one. And you just got to optimize for it.
So I agree that people can have the business that they want, but one weird belief I run into, and maybe you'll agree with this, is I run into a lot of people that they'll talk to me and they call me up and they say, hey, I want to grow my business, but I don't want to get beyond 200 doors, or I don't want to get beyond 400 doors. It's usually 400 doors.
Sure.
And they put this limit on growth.
Right.
And usually always behind any sort of cap on growth or any desire to stay small is this false belief that it will be painful or difficult. And my belief is that that's true if they believe it's true and they run their company the wrong way. I believe most companies, they grow their team, grow their business, and set it up in a transactional leadership way, and it's the wrong way. And they get to 400 doors or so, it gets incredibly painful. Then maybe get to 600 to 800 doors, and by then they are tapped out. They want out of the business. They're going to put somebody else in place to run it for them, and they want to escape. But that's only if they do it the wrong way. I believe that any sort of limitation on future growth stops their growth now. So if they're like, oh, I don't want to get to 400 doors, in their subconscious or in the back of their mind, they're always preventing growth because they see that in the future, they're going to get to a place that hurts. And they usually say, I've been there. I was at 400 doors and it was painful. So I don't want to get that big. I want to stay at this level because that's my comfort level. And I think they just need to learn some new things so that they can now expand their ability to offload and get into that space. And I think our ability to offload is directly proportional to our ability to scale our business, because the way I run my business and the way I believe people should run their business is that their business, the more clients that they have, the more revenue that they have, and the more team members that they have, your role as an entrepreneur, if you're doing it right, should get easier. It should get quieter. My role is really quiet. I do very few things now, but I do a lot of those few things. And every new person I bring onto my executive team or onto my team is taking a piece off my plate. So my life gets easier and easier. Right. And so I want to just throw that out there for those listening, that if you think, man, growth is painful, or it has to be painful, I don't believe that's true. I believe you're just doing it wrong. And those companies are the ones that can't retain millennials. They're the entrepreneurs and business owners that hate millennials, because millennials don't want to do meaningless work of just that's redundant and where they're micromanaged and told they want to be given outcomes and have autonomy and be able to win and have some freedom. And I believe that there's a healthier way of growing and scaling a business by creating that situation. And I believe that's more the future of business.
Totally, man. This is about disconnecting effort from outcomes. For most of us, those things are linked together. You got to decouple those. And as soon as you do so, a bigger possibility opens up. You got to get off of the guilt trip of the Puritan work ethic. My value comes from my effort. I'm working 80 hours a week. And, you know, because somebody hears what you just described, Jason, and they're like, well, Jason, like, let's be honest, you know, what do you really do? What do you really contribute to the organization? You're just up having all these ideas. We're down here doing all the weeds, you know, like you just gotta get off that. Like, reality check. Richard Branson is not working 1,000 times harder than you. He's 1,000 times more successful, presumably working a lot less and enjoying himself a whole lot more. Well, how is that possible? It's about decoupling effort from output. And that's the mental paradigm shift that people have to get through. And when you do that, you get focused on what you want, not what you don't want. 400 doors becomes meaningless. I mean, it's like 400, 4,000 kind of same difference. Yes, it's a different type of problem, but you just get to the point where you can see that you are not going to be the bottleneck. Leadership is either about hiring people to just extend your ability to still kind of control and micromanage the business, or it's about allowing other people to actually contribute and flourish in unique ways that you couldn't.
And take those things, take ownership of those things so that they are driving the outcomes instead of you driving every outcome in the business. So I look at it. And so one thing to keep in mind for growth that I'll point out is I look at this mindset that you are the person that has to drive every outcome as you being the only engine in the company. And everything else is a cog. So that means every single other person is a cog. So that's a lot of stress on an engine the bigger the company gets. But it feeds the ego because everybody comes to you. Every question comes to you. Nobody wants to make choices on their own because they're then on the hook. But that also means they never get to win. They never get to succeed. They don't. And if they can't fail, they can't win. And if somebody on my team does what I tell them to do and it doesn't work, it's my fault. But if I give them an outcome and I say, figure out how to do it, and it doesn't work, they feel that failure and they want to do better and they'll figure it out. And I don't penalize or punish them. They'll punish themselves, you know, and they want to do that. So I think I talked with a lady yesterday who's very savvy in the property management industry, been doing it a long time, and she's been struggling to grow her company. And after a short conversation, it became really apparent that she was trying to do all this operational stuff that was completely outside of her strength and skill set. And I said, if it's been on your to-do list for more than 2 weeks, you're not the person that should be doing it. Really simple. And she was like, oh, and I said, tell me about the different people on your team. And it was so obvious that her front desk person was like the ideal profile for an operator. I'm like, I'll bet this person, if you imagine their whole closet is color organized and their sock drawer is probably all taken care of and like everything's, and she's like, yeah, totally. And this person probably loves technology. I'm like, this person should be running your meetings and should be building your operations manual and your procedures, not you. She kept saying, oh, I need to build my procedures manual. And it's something's holding back.
Guilt trips.
I need to do this, but I'm not doing it. I'm like, you should not be doing it.
Oh boy.
It's obvious. Like, or you would have done it by now because it would have been fun for you.
Yeah. I like the indicator is just what you said, a guilt trip. Like if you feel a massive guilt trip about something, that should tell you something. Like that's useful information, you know, act on it. I'm not trying to be in the weeds with those things. I'm trying to create a big enough vision that people can get hired and feel like that there's a future. If your vision isn't very large, it's like a 3-rung ladder, you know, and people get on at the bottom like, hey, there's only 2 more rungs, you know, I can work hard, but who wants to go sideways for the rest of their career?
Yeah, no one. Well, Jordan, I think that we've been talking quite a while. This is really fun. It's always fun to jam with another entrepreneur and talk about growth. I think we threw out a lot of principles and concepts that are useful to people. Let's wrap this up. So how can people get in touch with Jordan? And is there a website you want to throw out to people to check out?
Yeah, man, I would say go to profitablepropertymanagement.com. That's the podcast where we have weekly conversations. And that's also the best place to get in touch with me.
Jordan, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, man. This is a blast, as always.
All right, great. So awesome to have Jordan come on the show and share. So I would recommend that you check out their CRM Lead Simple. We'll probably have them on for another episode to talk about that. And if you are a new listener and you're listening on iTunes, make sure to subscribe. We would really appreciate your feedback or a review on there. And if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel. And if you are in the property management industry and you are not yet a member of our awesome Facebook group, this free Facebook group that we have called the DoorGrow Club, there is a lot of powerful conversations going on in there, a lot of positive, helpful, momentum-based property managers that believe that in collaboration over competition to help this industry grow, and super helpful. It's probably the leading resource out there for property managers. You need support. You've got questions. You're dealing with weird issues that that have come up that you're not familiar how to handle. This is a great resource. Make sure that if you are an entrepreneur, that you apply to get into our group and answer all the questions, and then we'll get you approved so you can join in on all the fun and the conversation and feel that support. So I'm Jason Hole with the DoorGrow Show, and thanks for tuning in, everybody. Until next time.